All right, art nerds, this project took way too long to complete, but now that it's done, I really like my brand new super huge custom watercolor palette. Let me take you on this journey with me. Hey there, art nerds. I've got a bit of a project for us today. This is one I've been wanting to work on for several years now, and I kept putting it off, and now is the time to do it. So I want to turn this grungy palette that I've started to outgrow. I can't have all the colors in this palette that I would use for comics that I would want in this palette. I'm going to turn this into a large, hopefully 100 pan plus palette. So I have saved a couple of tins that I thought might work well for it. I also have some Rust-Oleum gloss protective enamel in white, as well as a spray enamel in a more decorative color. Both of these were left over from other projects. I have some magnets that we're going to glue to the back of our half pans, and I have some super glue. I'm going to be working with primarily the half pans that I already have, but if you're doing this kind of thing at home, you may also want to buy some half pans. Now, they do sell like magnet tape that you can buy. I don't have any, so I'm going to work with what I have. These are pretty dang strong magnets. They may be too strong for this project, so we'll have to see, but if you have the magnet tape and you want to use the magnet tape, or you're starting totally from scratch, magnet tape may be a better option. I'm going to have all the materials listed out for you guys down in the description below, but this can be a good one to expand your palette on a budget. You don't have to just do this because you're an art supply hoarder with way too many watercolors who prefers to lean heavily on convenience colors when she's painting her watercolor comic pages. You can also do this because you have a tin you'd like to use for watercolor. These are two larger tins that I've saved. What I like about these is that they are not hinged, so that I can double stack the palette and it doesn't have to take up more. It actually will take up less space on my table than my existing palette does, because if you guys have watched my watercolor videos, you guys know I don't actually really use the mixing surfaces. I prefer to use other palettes. But what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to clean it with soap and water, and I am also going to spray the interior with some fresh clean enamel paint. So this is the exterior and this is the interior, just in case I do decide that I want to use the lid for color mixing. I happen to have two of them. They're both Derwent Inktense tins, or Derwent tins. One's a color soft and the other one's an Inktense. So I usually keep my half pans in my palette with double stick tape. But one thing you want to be sure of before you start doing anything is you want to make sure your pans will fit in and it will shut, and that happens to be the case here. And we're going to use the magnets on the back so that we can place them wherever we want them to go, but I'm going to kind of fit them in pretty tightly because my goal is to get all of the colors that I commonly use to paint 7-inch Cara in here. Just in case you're curious, let's find out how many standard size half pans will fit in this tin if we went end to end. Hey, Joseph?
Yeah.
What is 13 times 9?
10 is 90.
Right.
13 times 3 is 27, so that's 117.
117. That is way more than double what my 48 half pan palette will hold. And this is just theoretical. I haven't actually tried to cram all of these in here. I haven't tried with the magnets. The magnets may repel each other. There may be issues. I may end up having to get double stick tape them in or use magnet tape on these anyway. But theoretically, we can hold 100, and you said 27? 117 half pans in here with a little bit of room at the bottom, maybe for a brush, and a little bit of room at the side. because we can't quite fit them all in. I'm sure there is probably like a really good way to maximize how many are going to fit in here. I'm not really that interested in min-maxing this. Let me know though if you are. You are also welcome to calculate how many whole pans it'll hold and how many eighth or quarter pans it'll hold if you're interested in doing that. But I am going to go wash this out with dish soap and water, because if there's any residual grease on it from, say, my hands, it's going to repel the gloss enamel. So I want to remove all of that so we have a nice, fresh, clean canvas to start spray painting on. So, since this was retail packaging, it actually has some unfortunate sticker schmutz on it. I'm going to try spritzing that with rubbing alcohol and removing it using a credit card before I try to spray paint it, because that's going to look terrible with spray paint on top of it. So I went by Ace. They didn't have quite what I was looking for. I was looking for like a gloss or a high gloss white enamel. They were out of that for some reason. So what I got was a primer, a semi-gloss, and then I'm going to go back either tomorrow or the next day and get a high gloss clear sealant, because that should just protect everything that I put down and make it so it can't absorb any water. So I didn't want to go with like an eggshell or a satin, because since those are like somewhat textured surfaces, they can actually kind of hold on to the pigment particles and lead to staining. And I want this to be, it can't be 100% stain proof. Even my professionally manufactured palette has some stains from like the phthalos and the dioxide purples. Some of those synthetics stain really a lot. But I'm hoping for easy to clean, as stain free as possible. I don't care if it looks good, I just want it to be pretty functional. So I'm gonna start by coating both the front and the back with the primer, starting with the interior, letting it dry fully, flipping it over, and then doing the exterior. So what the primer is going to do is it's going to give this metal surface a little bit of tooth to allow our subsequent layers of paint to really adhere to it and not, hopefully, just like peel or bubble or easily scrape off. You could also probably buff it with sandpaper all over to get the same effect. Did not feel like doing that, so that's what I'm doing here. So I'm gonna let it dry for a while, flip it over, and then do the other side. Okay, so the primer coat has had a chance to dry overnight. Now I'm going to start with the white enamel on the interior. And I want to do at least 2 coats because I want it to be really, really white. I don't want you to see any of the text that was underneath. And this is a semi-gloss, which is not what I wanted. They did not have what I wanted in stock. I really don't know how they were totally sold out of all their like gloss, but they were. So maybe it was like a car show weekend or something. So I'm going to go back and buy an additional, a 3rd can of spray paint so that I can get that like high gloss finish that I wanted. But theoretically, if you can find a high gloss white, you shouldn't need that 3rd can of spray paint. So this is what it looks like after 1 coat. It's a little more kind of off-white than I really wanted. Man, thank goodness this is not a do exactly everything that I do sort of thing, because there's been so many things that didn't go right, or I'm probably not doing 100% the way I'm supposed to or whatever. But I just wanted to make a mega watercolor palette. I'm hoping though that was just because that was a brand new can and maybe it hadn't been shaken quite well enough. It'll still serve the purpose, but I am getting kind of frustrated that the hardware store didn't have what I needed, and I needed to buy all these extra things, and it just really kind of changed the scope of what I wanted the project to be. This stuff is also super fumey, so I'm gonna let it dry for a while, like at least 30 minutes outside before I come back and do another coat. So I have a confession for you guys. As y'all know, this is not a handy person channel by any shakes. I'm an artist. That's about where my skill set ends. I'm a little bit crafty and I do like doing handy projects from time to time, but I wouldn't say I'm like good at them. So in my impatience yesterday, because my nail made a divot in the spray enamel, it's been kind of humid here, didn't fully dry. I sprayed it too close and too much, and I have a bunch of wrinkling up here. Now, I could just leave it as is, walk away from it, but I'd like to actually learn something. So I looked it up, and this happens when you spray too much paint too soon. The top layer dries, the bottom doesn't yet. It doesn't have something good to adhere to, so it just kind of wrinkles. So what I am going to do is I am going to scrape it off. This has been used to remove wallpaper, so it's a little gross. And then I'm going to sandpaper it down, and then I'm going to reprime that area, basically start that area all over again. I do, as you guys remember, have a whole nother tin that is basically like this, but just another Derwent product. I could start all over again if I wanted to. Joseph suggested doing that for time's sake. I want to see how this goes and then try that. So like I said, this isn't really like do everything the way I do it, because I'm learning as I'm going, but I thought it might be a fun project. And as Joseph pointed out, this is already more expensive than buying a palette. They don't really make half pan palettes this big. So, because I've been on the lookout for a while. So they make empty palettes with wells in them, but I specifically want to be able to put and reorganize half pans. That reorganization is really important to me. So, you know, I'm trying to make something that I feel like doesn't really exist anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Okay, this was a bad idea. It is still, I let it dry overnight. It has dried for 24 hours. It is still wet. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start from scratch with the other one, because this is worse than what I had. And that seems to be like the theme here. And I'm trying to work on not chasing failure to its worst state and kind of catching a project when it's failing and finding a way to kind of divert it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go prime the bottom of the other one and set this aside. And I don't know what, I didn't ruin it, but that paint is still not dry. I could not tell you when it's going to be dry, and I feel like trying to fix this is just going to keep making it worse. So while I'm in the middle of kind of spray paint hell trying to make spray paint work, I figured now is a good time to start gluing our magnets to the backs of our half pans. So this is the bottom that I already botched, and I wanted to demonstrate because I made a test just to make sure that the magnets wouldn't repel each other. So I glued using some super glue one of these tiny neodymium magnets to the bottom of these half pans. And I wanted to make sure we could actually set them up nice and tight and they wouldn't repel each other. It does look like that's going to work, which is fantastic. So I have here a used surgical tray. I bought a bunch of these as project trays a few years ago. They're going to work perfect for what I'm doing today. I am going to remove my half pans one by one. Yeah, they're looking pretty dang crusty. And we're going to glue our magnets to the back of them. I finally caught up to where I was at. So now we can use some masking tape. I'm going to tape the inside because I want to reprime the exterior so that the red paint can really stick to it. And I'm going to try to do it really carefully. And I am still waiting on my high gloss spray to come in. This is one of those projects where I really thought it was gonna be like super simple. I already had like all the materials. I had a good idea of what I wanted to do. I've been putting it off for 3 years, so it was a good time to do it. And it just ended up kind of turning into a lot. But as I've mentioned earlier, it can be challenging to find large size palettes for half pans, especially ones that don't come with a hinged lid, so you can just stack the lids. So, you know, this is the price you pay for bespoke, is making mistakes and learning. It is a good thing this isn't like, I don't know, a home repair or a project in that kind of way, a maker channel, because I'm full of great ideas and no idea how to do it and no experience, and everything is just learning as I go, and it ends up costing a boatload of money in the process. You know, great for YouTube, terrible for relationships. All right, I'm going to use a pair of scissors to snip these so they'll kind of flange. Oh, okay. Probably need 3. There we go, yeah, that'll flange. All right, these are ready to go. Let's take them outside and prime them again. So the interior has the white semi-gloss enamel. The exterior has been primed. I'm still waiting for my high gloss to come in the mail. It keeps getting postponed. And when I went back to Ace, they did not have any high gloss at all in clear. Like, I guess that's a popular thing. So today I'm going to be spraying the exterior on top of the primed areas. I have some Testors spray enamel in Red Flake. We used this when we painted the flag on our mailbox, so I'm pretty familiar with the color. I like the color. I'm kind of excited about the color. It's going to be a bright red watercolor box, and that just speaks to me. So we're going to get started on spray painting the exterior, and hopefully it'll be smooth sailing from this point out, because this project has dragged out way longer than I really expected it to. First layer done. You guys can see it's patchy. That's fine. We're going to do thin layers with this so that we don't get the wrinkling that we got earlier. Something I hate about this project is that bugs want to come die every time I do a layer. All the little bugs come flying, and it's like 50 out, so it's fairly cool for Louisiana, but I like to do it on sunny days so that hopefully it dries faster, and I guess the bugs are out warming themselves. So I don't really have like a spray hood. This is one of the better ways I could do it, but just a heads up about the bugs, I guess. So this project has really become kind of a white whale. It seemed really simple in concept. I thought I had all the materials, but as I worked on it, complications arose. But I'm really glad I did it anyway, because I've learned a few things, and I think I'm going to be really happy with my palette once it's finished. So we have the red enamel down. So one of the things about living in Louisiana is you're going to get bugs. So even though I moved into the garage and that helped with the bugs, bugs want to live in your spray paint apparently. So I don't have like a perfectly closed environment where I could do this. I don't have a spray hood. So there's going to be some natural imperfections for this. I don't have any way to like electrostatically plate this that would give us that like super perfect finish. So rather than fighting it, I'm going to move on. So there was some red enamel blowback into our white flat coat. So what I am going to do today is hopefully get the painting done. This is cured for at least 24 hours. I was sick with a migraine yesterday, so there was no way I could work on it. So one of the first things I need to do is remove the blue flashing, and then I'm going to use some painter's skirting tape around the other side, and then tape the plastic down to protect the red so that we can do one more layer of the semi-gloss. It almost is like a satin though. The semi-gloss white, and then I'm going to do my gloss coat on this. Now I can't do, the testers says you should not use a gloss coating on their enamel, so I'm going to follow the instructions and not do that. Something else I want to point out for you guys who are not super familiar with a variety of spray paints, as I was not, dry times vary drastically. I know that's like a big old duh for some of you guys, but even between like the primer, you could, if you wanted to, basically spray paint almost immediately on top of it. It seems like the more glossy, the longer the dry time is going to be, which kind of makes sense because you have to wait till it really cures. It doesn't have kind of that mattifying finish that will hold on to future layers. So we're learning as we go. So what I want to do, we're going to do the big, semi-big reveal where we remove the blue painter's tape. And then I'm going to go get my, yeah, I figured this might be a problem. I did so many layers. I thought that perhaps we would have some of this. Theoretically, if I really, really wanted to, they sell this particular color of testers in the little model bottles. I could paint it on like I would fingernail polish and just touch it up. But this project has actually been preventing me from painting because it is the holdup between me working on comic pages and larger illustrations. And it's already taken about 3 weeks between getting materials in, hunting down materials, and having to redo things. So, you know what? There has to be a point where you're just like, good enough is good enough. I'm satisfied with what I've got, and you just move on. But you guys can see some of the spray back that we got from the red enamel. So if you're working along at home, you don't have to use drape tape. We were painting our house, so we have a lot of this. And what this basically is it is tape with the plastic already attached. I am such a fumble fingers that the idea of making this myself, even for a small project like this, is a no-go. I'm also going to wipe down, this is just water, wipe down all my surfaces so that they're clean. Since it's been a couple days and I do have a cat and my house does get dusty. And even though I sprayed the sides, and I was pretty careful about spraying the sides of my palette, they still don't have quite as much paint as I would have liked. That could be something I choose to fight with in the future, but honestly, this project has gone on so long that I just don't want to. So I'm just not going to. 2023 needs to be the year of me being like, you know what, good enough is good enough, and I'm not selling this product anyway. This is for me. If I'm happy with how it looks, that can cut it. Now I'm going to need to get a pair of scissors to use with the drape tape because, one, I'm not particularly adept with an X-Acto blade, and two, I'm not particularly adept with an X-Acto blade. So, but this is about what it looks like. You can get it in different widths. It is typically sold in the automotive section, but it can be useful for house painting. We put it around our baseboards. And as you guys can see, it is a pre-adhered plastic draping solution. So for this next go round, I want to put the tape all the way around the outside, our red enamel, and then tape it in the center to protect from overspray. Honestly, this is overkill, but you know what? I had this stuff anyway, so I might as well use it. So I'm gonna use a little bit of tape to hold it in place, and then I'm going to do the other side. Okay, so hopefully we're on like the final painting part. So what I'm hoping to get done today is a single coat of the semi-gloss white to cover up all that blowback red, and then to use the clear gloss on top of it to make it a non-porous surface and to kind of seal it. So the thing about applying the clear gloss on top, according to the white, is that it has to be done either within the hour or after 48 hours. This project has already taken forever. So I'm really hoping that we can do it within the hour. So that's what I'm doing today. I am going to let this dry for about as much time as I can give it. So I'm going to set a timer for 55 minutes and then we're going to come back with the spray. And you guys can see how bugs just are drawn to this. Joseph suggested maybe it was like the albedo of it, kind of giving off like a light source. They do that to the red too. I think it's the fumes. They must think it's candy or something, but the garage is already better than doing it in the grass, albeit I have to do it with the garage door open because this stuff is very fumy. Please, please do not do this inside. All right, so it's been about 45, maybe 50 minutes since I sprayed. Looking better, covered up those little red freckles. So now we can do our final coat, our clear gloss coat. Seriously, this has taken like 3 weeks to do. I put it on kind of thick because I want it to actually be glossy and not kind of sandy like I was getting with the red enamel. And also so that I could get it in on those sides because those have gotten about as many coats of paint as like the rest of the palette, but for some reason they always seem really patchy. Maybe because the paint seems to drip down. So I'm gonna let it cure outside for about an hour, check on it, and then probably bring it inside and let it finish curing under a fan for like the remaining 24 hours. All right, so it's been 45 minutes since we did that glossy coat. It should be dry. Looks pretty glossy to me. Ooh, feels very glossy. Ooh, very glossy. I might do one more coat of the glossy just to kind of smooth things out, but I'm pretty satisfied with that. And then we'll finally be done with the painting part. We're finally almost done with this project. The end is finally in sight. I started this when I started my hiatus, so like January 23rd, 24th, and it's now February 6th. I did not see this taking this long, but this is how my projects seem to go. So I used a high gloss on it, and you guys can see it's really glossy. I wanted to stay within brand, like I wanted it all to be Rust-Oleum or just one brand. That was just not happening. So we did switch over to Krylon because that's what I could get a hold of. I really do not know if it's like supply chain issues in my local area. Maybe everybody's like, I don't know, working on craft projects or something. But I'm going to remove the tape. It's had several days to dry, so it shouldn't be a problem. And already it's looking pretty good. I do have to remind myself, like, this isn't going to be perfect. This is a project you did at home, so it's not going to look like something you know, were able to buy in a store. That shouldn't have even been something I was aiming for or thinking about, because that's just totally unrealistic. And I'm really trying to be more about those realistic goals here on the channel. It smells like paint. Like, I have let it air out pretty good and it still smells like paint. And I see here on the back, you can see some of the plastic left in indentation, even though it had several days to cure. So that's just part of life. But otherwise, it looks really good and I'm really happy with it. So one thing I want to do, I'm going to make sure it'll still close. It will, but it's going to fight me. Yeah. So this is going to take like some breaking in and getting used to. And I don't love how the enamel took on the plastic. It's not like a shiny gloss coat as I wanted. And I can't do a gloss coat on the front because Testers says not to do that. Now, it is honestly probably not 100% cured. I probably shouldn't leave it closed like this because for all we know, it's going to adhere to itself. But I'm going to go grab my magnetic half pans and we can start assembling this thing. These all have magnets on them. They sit nicely on our now magnetic tray. Honestly, if this hasn't cured 100%, these magnets may cause a divot in the enamel. But I have postponed working on Kara and working on illustrations for like 3 weeks now for this project. So my ADHD self just cannot and will not wait any longer. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of my current paints in here. And we'll do that, I guess, in time lapse. This thing is twice as big as the nasty old palette that it's replacing. This was a 48 half pan palette. I think I bought it before Meeden started offering palettes, so I paid way too much money for an empty palette that didn't even come with any half pans. You don't have to make that mistake. But look, you can fit more than twice as many half pans in this thing. Was I saving money doing this? Absolutely not. But now I have a customizable, easy to switch around magnetic watercolor palette that should hopefully suit the next 10 years of my painting life. So my next goal is to start swatching some colors and figuring out what I want to add to this palette now that I have all this newfound space, and to make a brand new color map so I can actually find the colors in this palette. I'm not quite done with this palette. I have like a sub palette, like the NoMBe palette, that I would like to glue magnets to and include as part of this palette, as well as some additional colors that I wanted to start adding into my convenience mixes and I didn't have the room for. I'm not really gonna show you guys all that. You guys get the basic gist. But I did think we ought to skip to the good part, which is I have all these super cute vinyl and plastic stickers that I've done. They're in the Natto shop if you see something you like and you'd like some of your own. Some of them are holographic even. Those are really cute. And I also have a brand new one here, as well as some static clings. And I wanted to decorate my palette with my own work. So in another room, the lid for this is fully cured. I retaped it off, respray painted it because these little magnets left some nasty little divots. And since that lid is meant to be a mixing surface, I can't have that. So I had to fix that. And then I had to allow my paints to cure for a while, tried to give the palette a chance to cure for a while. It just took forever. But I am really excited that we're making progress, because what I am going to do is, these were the swatches for the colors I wanted to add to the palette that I'd never swatched before. I cross-referenced them against my existing swatches. So I'm going to trim this up to fit in the lid of this, and we're going to do our final swatching and color map. I say final because the whole point of this is its design to be adjustable and to grow as my needs change and grow. So I'm sure from time to time I will add in a color or sub out a color. That's the whole point. But for the time being, I think we're finally ready to do the color map. Now, for the color map, I want it to be a few things. It doesn't need to have the color names because I have that all typed out. What I may do with that, though, is print it out and then tape it to the back of the color map for easy refill reference. Also, my pans all have their names written on them, but it is honestly easier if you have like a written reference that isn't on the pan, so you don't have to take the pans out to refill them. I did keep the NoMBe palette still separate from the main palette, and the main reason for this is there are a lot of pastels in this palette and a lot of neons. So these are all colors that require special handling. So I wanted to keep them separate because that's a continued reminder to me that they need to be mixed and handled differently than my main mixing palette. we had some mishaps while swatching these. This is actually my second swatch sheet, and there were still areas that I had to scrub out and redo. And as you guys can see, there are some gaps. I want to add some more pinks in here, but I'm still waiting to see. And even though this was supposed to be a palette that I could grow into, there's not much room left to grow, but that's on me. And honestly, I don't really add a lot of colors to my Daily Driver palette often, so this probably will last me quite a while, but it was also a lot of effort. I'm going to let this finish drying, so I'm going to move that over to the side, and then I'm going to grab my cover, and it has been reglossed. You can actually see the divots. Those are from the magnets. I thought it had fully cured. I guess it had not. The timing was great because it was even after I'd put the stickers on. Spray paint takes so much longer to cure than you think it would. So I'm going to remove the blue tape, and the blue tape is actually going to remove some of the spray paint. Love that. But you know what? We are at the part of the project where that's fine. I will live with it. I'll cover it with stickers or something, but I will live with it. Look, we also have some tape divots in the enamel, you know, from what the plastic didn't do, the tape did. But that's okay. Finished is better than perfect, and this was taking way too long. So I'm going to set this aside. Up here, this is where the color map is going to go. And of course, we will just demonstrate. It better close. I won't scream. I won't do that to you guys, but I'll be so sad. It does! It closes. Now, if I were traveling, I'd want to put a couple of big broccoli rubber bands on this just to hold it closed. I had to do that for my other palette anyway, mostly because I don't want these exploding in my suitcase, you know? But this palette isn't really meant to be a travel palette. It's meant to be an at-home palette that can stack so it takes up less space, or I can use the lid as a mixing surface if I want to. So that's already working out a lot better. And then for our palette map, I'm going to go ahead and remove it from the block using a palette knife. Cut it out and fit it into the lid. And I am so ready to be watercoloring again. I am so ready to be able to use my palette. This took so long, and I probably did things the wrong way, but you know, we're not here for perfection. We're here to try new things and to learn. And I did just that. I tried new things and I learned. Okay, y'all, I think I'm going to call it here because there really isn't much else. Y'all will probably see this palette in various videos and TikToks, so you'll see it around. If you have any questions about how it handles after 6 months, let me know. One problem is that it's not super sturdy. Like the metal I made it out of, the Derwent tin that I used for this, it wasn't like a really thick tin. So this is a good amount of weight, and we've already had our first breakage. It wants to warp on me. So like if you have a thicker tin that you can use for this, that might be a good idea. I also switched about halfway through to a different type of glue. I was using, not permanent glue. Oh, the kind you glue your fingers together with. Superglue, yay! And then I switched to like a household glue that's supposed to be good for like almost everything. And it actually is worse than the Superglue. So, you know, I don't know. If I had it, I could have used like UV resin to bond it, and that would have done a better job than this. Like there's areas for improvement. If you guys have some suggestions about how you would do it differently or what you would do that would be better than this, let me know down in the comments. Be nice about it, but I am curious, you know. I wasn't pretending like this is the end all be all. It is an improvement on what I have, but there are probably ways that we could improve even further on this. So let me know down in the comments below. I'm gonna go glue this back on. So I decided to put the brand new palette to the test, and I painted this illustration with it, and I am really happy with it. One of the things I like is that while it has a large footprint, it's about the same footprint as my 48 half pan, except the 48 half pan had a mixing surface at the top and at the bottom, and I didn't use those. So it was just taking up space, and I couldn't really easily remove them. With this, the lid can be stuck underneath. I can put it to the side, and I have magnets on the swatch sheet. So if I really want to, I can use this as a mixing surface, but I don't have to. It's optional. And I can put it behind these, so it's actually not taking up that much space. I'm really happy about the new colors that I've added. I tried to utilize several of them in this illustration, and I do actually have some more colors I want to add. I want to add a Quin Magenta because, believe it or not, I don't have a Quin Magenta in this palette. I am thinking about adding Rose Madder and Quin Opera. And then I have a couple more browns coming in. It's a raw sienna and like a yellow gold or a golden ochre, just to go down here and kind of finish out my neutrals. But I am really happy with how this palette functions. It was a lot of work. I don't know that I would recommend you going to all the trouble that I went to make a palette just like this one. I do think you could just use a Derwent tin as is and skip all the woes that I had with spray painting, but I wanted it to look a certain way, and I didn't want it to be mistaken for something that it wasn't. So I'm really happy with how this project turned out. So if you would like to make your own, I will have the materials you'll need for this listed out in the description below, as well as some alternatives that might function better, like those sticky magnets might be better than gluing neodymium magnets to the back. You guys will have to try it and let me know. I know a lot of people use that for their smaller palettes. You could also use empty makeup pans. They're different in terms of size. They're flatter. So if you paint really big things and you want to get a really big brush in there, a makeup pan could be a really cool way to do this. And they do actually sell magnetic makeup palettes designed for rearranging and use for that. You can find them on Amazon. Makeup artists use them. That's not really, well, I'm very intrigued by that idea. I don't really paint that way. I don't paint in that scale. And that would be a really hard sell to my spouse, who is already trying to make sure I don't amass a total art supply hoard, that it's just like a focused art supply hoard on things I'll actually use. So while I think that's a really neat idea, and I'd love to see somebody else do it, and it would probably be a very popular video if I did it, I wouldn't use it, and I don't need it, so there's no point in me doing it. Whereas with this thing, I've been needing a bigger palette solution for years, and I just kept putting it off. So this makes a lot of sense for me, at least. And I mean, you can buy large empty tins on Amazon. I wanted a shallow tin though. You can also buy empty pencil tins, or you could just save one and recycle it like I did. So I hope you guys enjoyed building a palette with me. We had our ups, we had our downs, but I'm really happy that I can be utilizing this palette now. And hopefully I've inspired you guys to take one studio supply that maybe isn't exactly what you're looking for and make it into something that's going to work for you. So my build palette is mostly done. I've even painted with it, but I'm going to gently turn it over. I was hoping nothing would fall out. No, do I need to glue? Yeah, look at that. I need to re-glue those. Dang it. So that's on me. Everything I've done with the weld tight glue has come off, and everything I've done with Gorilla Super Glue has not. So take that as you will. Flip it over very, very gently. So you can see how it's gotten scuffed. That is because the enamel is still soft, even though it's had weeks and weeks to dry. But I have these little feeties, these little rubber feeties. Sometimes you get these for free with things. And these are just like skid-proof feeties that will also keep it from messing up your work surface. I'm not worried about messing up my work surface. I mean, you guys have seen my work surface. It looks terrible. But I did think, okay, that one, the adhesive wants to just peel off. I did think having it so it doesn't just skid all over the place, not that that's been a problem yet, but I just thought A, it would make it look more finished, and B, it just seemed like a thing to have to make it look more professional. So what I need to do is I need to re-glue these magnets. This is annoying because I am out of, maybe I'll try E6000 this time, because the other glue, the weld glue, which is supposed to bond with like everything, is just not doing it. But I do need to re-glue these, but I also wanted to add some pinks to this. So you see I've left room for those pinks, and I have some completed half pan. Well, I say completed. They have, so this is with the Gorilla Glue Super Glue, and that just does a better job bonding than the other stuff did. So I am going to label and fill these half pans, and I'm gonna have to re-glue these magnets back on. So for the record, this is the stuff that's not working so well. Weld Bond, Universal Space Age Adhesive. You know, all that money we funneled to NASA was spent on this at some point. And it says wood, tile, glass, foam, stone, ceramics, and more. So one would think little metal magnets to plastic should work. Clean and dry surfaces, apply thin coat, bring together, clamp lightly if needed. Dry time up to 1 hour. I have noticed that often it takes 2 days to dry all the way through. It is not for containers holding liquids. Do you think watercolor counts as a liquid? I'm not sure. Do not freeze. Water cleanup. So I would use E6000 because that would be, at least in this instance, a better glue. But I don't know where it went. So we're gonna just keep reinventing the wheel. I like how there, oh, it broke the magnet. It didn't want to come off so bad. Oh man, this project has really just been like a Sisyphean task. I have wasted, and I mean this, wasted so many magnets because they've broke or they've slammed together. And they do make adhesive like magnet strips, but I already had these neodymium magnets, so this whole project, the point was to work with what I have, and then I end up buying a bunch of stuff anyway. Not very work with what you have. All right, so I've been letting them just dry. Usually I'm just gluing one pan at a time because you can see it wants to dance its way over to its friend over there, but I try to keep them separated so that the magnets aren't flying all over the place. What do you guys think? Do you think it was all worth it? That was a lot of work to custom make a watercolor palette when there are plenty of palettes already on the market. Would you do the same thing, or would you do things a little bit differently? Let me know. My thought process with this is I have no shop skills whatsoever. I have no shop equipment whatsoever, and I was gonna work with what I had. Little did I know that I was gonna end up buying a bunch of things, because that's how projects in Natto Soup Studio seem to go, even when you're working with what you've got. That said, I'm really pleased with how it turned out. The only problem I have is these half pans, because this is pretty flexible. The second glue I started using, the wheeled glue or the weld glue, that stuff's garbage. Use Loctite for this if you're gonna use it. I'd run out of Loctite halfway through. You can kind of tell which half pans used Loctite and which ones didn't, because haha, they're the ones that are losing their magnets just all over the place, and I'm constantly having to reglue them. So I've got some Loctite coming in, and as I pop magnets, I'll just work on regluing them. That is pretty much the only thing that I would change based on the materials that I have and the skills that I have. As a palette, I am really happy with this. It doesn't actually take as much space as my 48 half pan palette did, because it doesn't have those mixing surfaces that I'm not using anyway. It is just the palette, so I can get way more paint without taking up as much space. Because the lid is removable, I can take it off, put it off to the side where I can reference it, but it doesn't have to take up desk space. I also taped some little neodymium magnets to my watercolor map so I can remove it from the lid if I want to, and I can use this as a mixing space if I need to, but they're held pretty securely in the lid, so that, I have to be careful, I'm doing this one-handed, so that it won't just fall out or fall into my paints. Now, something I want to point out is this palette is not meant to prevent these paints from molding. If you're having mold problems with your paints, leave them with the lid off until they've fully dried before you put them away. I have never had problems with mold, and I live in a very humid area, and I think it's because I always let my pans of watercolor, all of these came from tubes, I let them dry out fully before I put them away. Also, I'm just lazy, so sometimes I just forget to pick them up. In terms of handling, so much better than what I was dealing with. So much easier. I have more colors. They're all right there. I've already painted a couple of watercolor illustrations. I really like this palette. I'm really happy with this palette. Could I have bought something nicer and better on Etsy? Maybe, but I wanted to work with something that could work with the existing half pans I already had. I was looking to do a palette migration, and you're gonna be kind of hard pressed to find something as big as this that will allow for that. So if you never travel, you don't really need to cover your paints, you could just buy a sheet of ferromagnetic metal. So basically any metal that magnets will stick to that's thick enough, a couple millimeters would probably work. And you could just use that as your palette and not even deal with the sides. But I do travel from time to time, so having a palette that I could close and use like a rubber band to hold it absolutely secure seemed like a pretty good idea for me. If you like the idea of this project and you would like to try making your own variation, I will have all of the materials, particularly the materials that I recommend, listed and linked for you guys in the description below, as well as some other relevant links like some of my watercolor tutorials that I think you guys might enjoy. This has been like a month-long journey. It took way longer than I thought it would, but hopefully this new and revised palette will last me for the next 10 years, kind of the way the old 48 half pan palette lasted me for like about 10 years. So I see this as an investment. Now, if I could make the metal just a smidgen thicker, I would, and I did add some of those little rubbery anti-skid feet to the bottom of it, you know, because I work on a Teflon coated surface, didn't want it skidding and sliding all over the place. But if you end up making your own, I would love to see what you come up with, so please tag me at NattoSoup on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, like whatever you use, and show me, because I'd love to see what you guys come up with. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this month-long watercolor palette journey that might have been an adventure in futility, but I'm still happy with the end results. I hope you guys had a fun time hanging out with me, and I look forward to seeing you guys again really soon with another tutorial, art supply review, or convention recap. Bye, guys!